Okay, all good.
Okay,
Ready to.
right.
Yeah.
I can close the page, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Welcome. Okay, let's get our show on the road. Guess we can let in our waiting room participants.
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon. Good morning for some of you, maybe. Oh, it's afternoon for everyone, I think now. Great to see some familiar faces on our call today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for our second Critic Impact Ed Week session. I know we're probably expecting a few more people to hop on, but in the interest of time, I think we'll get going, and the recording will be sent out at the end or later today or tomorrow. So today we're going to be talking about how to navigate the AI era of computer science education, and how Critic is contributing to that. So I'll be joined today by Vlad and Mark. So all of us are from the Critic team. So my name's Kelly. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Critic. What that means is I always say exactly what it sounds like. Essentially, my job is to make sure that instructors and students and even administrators are set up for success with our tools, and that everybody understands how to make the most of them, and all of the great features and functionality that we offer. My background is also in education, so I'm a former elementary school teacher, and very happy to be able to blend my passion for education with my passion for technology. I'm joined today, like I mentioned, by my colleagues Vlad and Mark. I think Mark is running a little late from another meeting, but Vlad is here to hold down the fort in the meantime. So, Vlad, maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm like Kelly said, I'm the director of products. So one of the things that I'm responsible for at Critic is just working with our engineering team. That's headed by Mark, our CTO, and I'm responsible for kind of overseeing what's the next big thing that we're going to build. And that's partly what we're going to be talking about today. We just recently launched a very exciting new product called Coding Authorship. So we'll dive into that as part of this workshop.
Awesome. Thank you, Vlad. Yes, and Mark will be here as well. And as mentioned, he is our CTO. Okay, so what's on the agenda for today? So we've got an intro, little activity to just get everybody kind of sharing where they're from, and then we'll talk a little bit about what this learning gap is all about and why what AI is hiding in coding classrooms. So what is this role that it's playing now? We'll talk a little bit about Critic's mission and background because that does directly connect to why we are building the things that we are building here. And then we'll shift gears, and Vlad and Mark will speak to the benefits of peer code review. They'll introduce our new coding authorship activity. You'll get an exclusive sneak peek at that with a live walkthrough of how it all works. And then we'll finish up with our key takeaways and a discussion point, and open it up for questions at the end. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go along. But otherwise, if you want, we can also have an opportunity for people to unmute at the end of the call. So, to just kind of kick us off in the Zoom chat, please share a little bit about yourself. Tell us what school you're from. If you're a teacher or instructor, what program you are, or discipline you are coming from, assuming that it is computer science. But hey, we might have some folks from other programs as well. And then, in one word or phrase, how confident are you that your students understand the code that they submit? So, I mean, maybe you even want to put it in a percentage form. But if you're running coding assignments, how confident are you that your students are understanding that code that they're submitting? So give everybody like a second to just share where they're coming from in the chat. And then we'll move on. I think some people are typing. I know we're kind of springing this on you. Like to get a little bit of engagement going. All right. Oh, yes, and our colleague Devanshi is here as well, which is great. All right. Well, I'm going to move on from this slide, but feel free to continue sharing your schools and programs and your confidence level in terms of your students' understanding of the code they're working on. Okay, so just wanted to kind of start with some quotes and stats here to get the wheels spinning. So this first one just kind of states 87% of CS educators cite an increased student dependency on technology as their top concern with AI. This was the single most cited challenge in the survey that was run by the ACM Task Force on Gen AI and Programming Assessment just this year. So that was a pretty big survey with 763 educators. And so I think it really does speak volumes to the to the challenges that instructors are facing today across many disciplines, not just computer science, but computer science having kind of a unique challenge because of all of the different programs that are used for creating those codes and going through a kind of review process. And then only 16% of senior developers say that junior engineers fully understand the AI generated code that they submit. We actually talk about this a little bit internally here at Critic as well, just in terms of, folks who have maybe graduated quite a while ago might have a deeper understanding of how code works and be able to understand and identify and think more critically about it than people who are in this current generation where they have easy access to answers and ideas and things through all these different AI platforms that are now out there and that everyone seems to be using with no real idea on what they're doing. So that's what we're going to focus in on today. So what is this learning gap and what is AI hiding in coding classrooms? So first of all, why is this happening right now? Oh, sorry about that little box. Well, AI coding assistants are generating working code instantly, right? Just like if you were doing an English assignment or anything else, you can go into ChatGPT or any other generative AI assistant and type something in and it's going to produce an answer for you. Whether or not that answer is actually of good quality or not is what is, requiring the student or the person on the prompting end to kind of dig a little deeper. And so they are able to kind of complete work in seconds. And something that we are hearing a lot of is instructors who are, that to that second point, a passing submission is no longer confirming understanding, right? That's been one of our big themes this week in terms of just validating student learning. The code might run correctly, but the underlying concept behind it was never actually learned by the student. So how can we prove that they are learning the skills that their degree is supposed to be teaching them? And the reasoning muscle atrophies without practice, right? So the more that they don't do that, the more they rely on those generative AI experiences, the more that they're going to miss out on the opportunity to figure out how to debug their own code, how to critique peers, because we know that peer review is a big part of coding. This is just kind of a big step that students are skipping in the whole learning process. And why does this matter beyond the grade? Well, the foundational skills are declining, so students are increasingly relying on the AI to complete the coding tasks, as we said. And critical thinking is becoming a huge gap. It's really limiting the students' ability to assess and improve the AI-generated code because they're just thinking that it's accurate and accepting it at face value, and that's the end of that. And one of the biggest things as well, workplace readiness. So we all always talk about employability. I know that's something that's huge for institutions to measure. And that's a big goal for us as well, is to help students develop professional skills. And so they're entering the workforce and they're not as ready because they've just been learning to rely so heavily on AI. So they're not really equipped to participate in these modern engineering teams in the workplaces that they're entering. So how does that tie into what Critic does and what our mission and background is all about? Well, we are really here to foster critical thinking, authentic learning, and ethical use of AI. But I want to talk about that first piece first, because I often say that that is the heart behind everything we do here at Critic. We have a very special team here, and everyone believes very strongly in developing critical thinking skills in young people. That is what our co-founders were thinking about when they decided to build Critic a few years back. And that has been kind of at the forefront of everything we do. So we first did that through our peer assessment tool and now have expanded that through authorship tracking as well, to just challenge students to think critically about the work in front of them, to be able to not just accept things at face value and to also see things from multiple perspectives. So we really want to provide them with authentic learning environments where they're going to go a lot deeper into concepts. They're going to really understand them on a deep level, and as well throw AI into the mix. And now we also want to get that ethical use of AI so that they can be responsible when they are using it as well. So what are we doing? Mentioned a little bit about Critik 360. So that is our peer assessment tool, and we are really showing through that tool how students are evaluating and reasoning through going through peer work. Then we introduce Visible AI, which is showing how the students are thinking and writing their own work, including how they interact with AI. It is a really, really neat program, especially when you can combine the two together. And so then you get that full picture of how the critical thinking took place, right from the creation of the work and tracking everything that was put into how it was authored, all the way through to getting that human connection, that human touch, the collaboration that they get when they are peer assessing each other and going through a peer review process, which for Critik 360 is a 3-stage process. So here's just kind of a high-level overview of what that looks like. So again, for Critik 360, that's peer assessment at scale. So students are exchanging meaningful feedback with less instructor effort. We see this working particularly well in introductory level classes, which are tend to be very large in size, with 100 plus, sometimes 500 plus students. So very, very large classes where you might not be able to do assignments like this otherwise. Activating higher order thinking skills. You notice that our logo is a triangle, so we really are built upon Bloom's taxonomy. We want students to get to those higher order thinking skills and get to that top level in the pyramid. And grading power, which is what we call our secret sauce, a bit of a complex feature to explain. But really what we're doing with grading power is making sure that scoring in the peer assessment process is as accurate as possible. And we do that by assigning every student a grading power and attempting to measure how well and how accurately they are able to evaluate their peers, and using that to create more accurate scoring. Then you get to Visible AI. So that's our academic integrity tool. And that is giving instructors visibility into the AI use. It's really creating trust, essentially, between the instructor and the student, so that the two parties have equal ability to see exactly how the assignment was created, what AI was used. It's actually built right into the Visible AI tool, how they used it, what prompts they were asking it, and sourcing every single piece of information that's comprising into the submission, including pasted content and sourced work and that kind of thing. It allows instructors to set a customizable AI policy with exactly how much AI content and pasted content they're going to allow, and where they're going to allow that from. And then it also, again, has that built-in AI assistant, so the students are able to and encouraged to use AI and actually flex that muscle that we were talking about, so that they are getting practice in developing those AI literacy skills, because we do know that employers do want those skills when students are graduating. So we want to encourage them to use it in a safe and responsible environment. So I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues Vlad and Mark now to speak to the benefits of peer code review.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Kelly. I'm just going to wait for it to load a bit. But yeah, so peer review, why is it so important overall when we're talking about, specifically when we're talking about coding and computing science? It's an essential skill. For us, we're a technology company, and we have a lot of developers working at here at Critik, and every single piece of code that gets shipped gets reviewed. So we wanted to make sure that anything that we do with regards to coding authorship has peer assessment tied in. But it goes beyond coding authorship, and peer review is something that's an essential skill for anybody that wants to work on a team after they graduate university. And that's, it's going to be essential for them to be successful, not only to be able to give feedback to their colleagues, but also be able to receive constructive feedback and act on it. So it's a very critical skill, and something that's core to our tool.
Right.
Go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry, there was one more.
Oh, there's like, okay. So I want to dive into a little bit into coding authorship. Um, And fundamentally, the way it works is it's a new product. We're launching it for the fall term, so it's available as of Monday, which is the beginning of classes in a lot of the U.S. schools. So we're pretty close to go live. We're launching it soon. And the way it works is it's very similar to what Kelly mentioned earlier with Visible AI. So Visible AI is writing authorship. So as students are writing their essays or their writing assignment, whatever it may be, we track how much of it is AI generated, how much of it is pasted, how much of it is original. So we take the same approach, and now we're applying it to coding. And the way we're doing it is it's a VS Code extension. So those of you who are familiar with coding, VS Code is a free one of the most popular IDEs available that really widely used. That's why we chose it. So the way it works, students just download the Critic extension in VS Code. They get a unique access code from Critic, and that's how they can access their assignment directly in VS Code. They write the code, they can run it, they can iterate on the code. Their iterations are visible to the instructor, so the instructor can see how they actually wrote the code, how many iterations it took to write the code. Their progress is tracked, so they can see which parts are AI generated. And they can also use our specialized AI agent, which is meant to foster critical thinking. Again, that is our goal as a company. That's really our why, the heart of Critic. So as they engage with this AI chat, it asks them a lot of follow-up questions and it nurtures them to the problem, never gives them the solution. And next slide, we'll go into a little bit of in detail how it works. So as an instructor, you go into Critic. This is how Critic looks like today. So you create your course and you have a variety of different assignment types that you can create. So you can create just a simple peer assessment assignment where students create something, they get evaluated. You can do a group assignment. You can do a live presentation where they're presenting in front of a group and they're getting evaluated live. But you can also do these authorship assignments as well. So like I said, we have a writing authorship assignment, which is on the bottom there, and then we have a coding authorship assignment. And just in the next few slides, I'll dive deeper into what coding authorship is, just because it's our newer product. So next slide. Here's once you select the coding authorship assignment or the writing authorship, you as the instructor, you have complete control how much AI or pasted content you're allowing in that assignment. So you can set those thresholds. Students can go above those thresholds, but it just decreases what we call their authenticity score. And as an instructor, you can take a look at all the students, their authenticity scores, and you can zero in on the ones that are maybe using AI more than they should in their assignments. Like I said earlier, we have a specialized AI assistant. We call it the guiding assistant. And as an instructor, you also have the ability to customize it and make it your own. So Kelly, once you go on to the next slide, this is how we actually surface what the system prompt looks like for the guiding assistant. And as an instructor, you can go and you can change the assistant's goal, you can change the core principles, the engagement steps, you can really make it your own. And then you can test it and really make sure you're happy with it before you publish it. And then it's live for your assignment for students to use.
Sorry, just unmuting myself here. I absolutely love this. This part in particular, we were talking about this as a team here at Critic the other day, just the amount of kind of personalization that you can put into this, just reading through these different text boxes that you can have, in here as a baseline, but then also adjust to meet your needs. So it's really cool.
And so once you've selected the assistant, the next thing is just select the rubric. So well, the coding assignment, there's two types of grading. One type is the test suite. So the coding runs through a test suite that the instructor typically creates, and it's a pass-fail on a test suite. But there's also the software side of grading. So this is a rubric that usually the TAs use, the instructor use to look at the coding structure, to look at how the code was written. And what we do with Critic is this is the peer assessment part. So this is the rubric that's going to be used when students are evaluating each other's code, or if it's not a coding assignment, how they're evaluating each other's written assignments. And this could also go beyond because we support formulas. So it could be a STEM assignment as well. But before you move on, Kelly, I also want to say it's completely flexible. So we use AI to generate a basic rubric based on your code, based on the assignment name, assignment learning objectives, instructions. So we create this initial rubric that you can completely customize. But if you have a rubric that you already love and use for your assignments, all you have to do is import that rubric and we will regenerate it for you in Kritik. Yeah. And so this part is really illustrates, this is how you schedule an assignment, and this kind of showcases the different stages that are involved in a Kritik activity. So the create stage is when students do the assignment. So in a coding assignment, they're doing that part in VS Code. And Mark is going to walk you guys through how the extension in VS Code works. Then the evaluate stage, that's when they get to see each other's submissions and provide feedback and also evaluate one another based on the rubric. And the last stage, which is the feedback stage, and that's when the creators give feedback back to the evaluators on the quality of their written evaluation. So as an instructor, you have full visibility. So you can see here, you can see the authenticity score of all the students. You can see the AI content, original content, pasted content. You can see this as the students are writing their assignments. So this is a live view. As they're composing their assignment, these stats will update. And the more important stat is total AI prompts. This is great, especially in the context of a guiding assistant. So what it really means is they're interacting with a guiding assistant, they're trying to solve a problem. The guiding assistant is asking them follow-up questions, and they're really trying to get down to what the core of the problem is, and they're really learning here. So it's really healthy to see a lot of AI prompts in this case, because that's where you can see students are really trying to achieve something, they're trying to solve a problem. And time spent just simply shows how much time they spent so far on the assignment. And that's essentially just another slide of how Kritik works. There's the create stage, evaluate stage again is when students evaluate each other's work. And the feedback is when the students give feedback to one another. The grading is a really great stage. This is where you're in control. This is where you and your TAs can look at all the submissions from students, adjust their grades. Kritik is focused on the large class sizes. So our average class size is about 300 students. And the way we did that is through something called calibration. Essentially, we look at how you grade and we map that to students, and we identify students that grade closely to how instructors grade. And then we disperse those students among the class. And so each cohort usually has at least one strong student. Think of it as like getting your TAs and scaling your TA team across the whole class. So when you adjust the grade, it actually has a cascading effect to their grading power and overall increases the grading quality of the whole class. So this is the Kritik view. This is where you can see which students have completed each stage and their overall grade. Students can also dispute their grades, and this is where you can manage those disputes and communicate back and forth, or communicate to the students whether you approve or disapprove or do not approve their dispute. And this is how it looks like for instructors. So when you look at a student's submissions, you can see the full code, you can see the project files, you can see all the stats, what's the authenticity score, how much AI content, pasted content, or original content. But not only that, you can see the full AI chat history. So you can see how that student interacted with the AI chat. You can see all the pasted content, and you can even see all the different versions, all the iterations it took. So you can really have a good sense of how that student completed the assignment. And this image is just the feedback stage. The students can provide feedback on two different scales: the motivational scale and the critical scale. And again, they get feedback on the written evaluation. They don't see the score, they don't see the grade, but they're giving feedback on the written content their peers have provided them, the written feedback. And that's it on the Kritik side. I'm going to pass it over to Mark, our CTO, who's going to walk us through the VS Code extension.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Let me just share my screen here, and I'll show you how this looks like from the student perspective. Okay, you should be able to see my Visual Studio Code here. If you're familiar with software development, you know Visual Studio Code is one of the most common the most common IDEs, very popular. So what we built is we built an extension, a Kritik extension into Visual Studio Code that supports these authorship functions, basically allowing the student to write the code and do things how they normally would with the authorship transparency for the instructor. So after you've installed the extension and set things up, you can log in. When the student is in Kritik, they'll get a launch code that they paste in here. And then from that, they're able to log in. And there they can download the instructions and the project file, see some information around the due date and their authenticity stats. And then it's basically a regular Visual Studio project. So you can see all the files here. You can see, you can open the different files. You can make any changes. I can add a new function here. Let's say sum to 100, right? So I can just type in some code here myself. And then everything that I'm typing in, it's being tracked. If it's AI text or if it's pasted from another source or if it's something that I've typed it in myself. So back in the extension view, we do have these file insights. So it shows 0% of the file here has been written by AI out of the 40% maximum that's configurable when you're setting up the assignment that Vlad showed. 100% is currently original, and then 0% of it has been pasted in from another source, but up to 50% is allowed. So let's say, for example, I can paste in some text here from another window. It asks me to provide a reason for where this is coming from. I can say this from like ChatGPT, and then it pastes it in. So it includes it as a comment, plus it's tracking the source. So you can see here, 19% is now pasted. And if I click this button here, I can now show the editor highlights to see clearly that all of these are standard, white background. That's original text typed by me, but this section here with a white background is pasted text. So that's some metrics and authenticity tracking that we're doing per file. And currently the assignment, 85%, 85% authenticity on this project. So we also have an assistant here. I'm able to select my LLM, either ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and I can ask it to write some code. And this is given within the boundaries, within the guardrails that the AI assistant has been set up when you created the assignment. So I can do something here like write a function that, let's say, outputs Kritik 100 times, right? So I can ask it to generate that. Let's see what it does here. Yeah, she's going to give AI a second here to write some code. So it's going to go off in the background and do this. And then while that's working, the student can continue to edit files or do anything as usual in Visual Studio Code. So here we go. So it actually gave me a simple approach, gave me some information about it, and then I can actually insert this into the document. So you can see the function that was written here has been pasted in to the app. And then when I show the authenticity information, I can see again the pink background that's tracking it and is visible to the student and the instructor that this part here was written by AI. And then we have the whole assistant conversation and chat being recorded as well. So the student can go ahead, do their coding, make changes, fill everything in here. And all the changes are being saved automatically to the Kritik server. So it's all being tracked. And the student can see that when they log into Kritik, plus the instructor can see that when they're grading. And then when they're ready to submit, they have the ability to run the project here and test that it runs correctly. If you have a test suite of some sample unit tests or checks that you want to do to make sure it's passing, they can run the checks here. And then lastly, when they're ready to submit it, they can submit it in, which marks it as officially submitted on the Kritik side. So handing it in gives a little bit of a celebration. And of course, the student can still make changes and hand in again, or even download the finished work. But we just show that it's been submitted and it's finished. So from a student perspective, it's very familiar with what they're comfortable with. It's a standard Visual Studio Code editor with an extension, a Kritik extension that we've added in. And the only real difference is that they have to sign in, use the launch code from the activity, and then hand it in, submit it via this option here when they're ready to go. Then the code and everything is on the Kritik side. All right, I think that's all I wanted to share.
Thanks, Mark. Kelly, if you can just pull up the deck.
Yep. I'm just getting it back open. Okay.
Yeah, so just to wrap up with a few key takeaways. Yeah, first takeaway.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think one of the things now that we're learning is with AI, once you see the final submission from a student, it doesn't really prove the student did any learning. It's so easy for them to in the context of coding, very easy for them to generate code. If they're writing something, it's very easy for that to be AI generated. So it's very important to see how the student actually got to the answer. What was their thought process? How did they get to the final output? Yeah, and that allows the students not only see the final submission, but how the code was built. What was the thinking? How they engaged AI? What kind of questions they had? What was their thought process? And it allows students to see a similar submission. All these students work at the end of the day, they're working on the same assignment. So you can see how another student has also completed the assignment and given them feedback. But you also have the context because you have done the same assignment yourself, and you get to see how another student completed it to give you another point of view on how that assignment could have been done and where, and then you get to evaluate that student. So you have that you're using that microcognition when you're making these micro decisions as you're looking at the rubric and making decisions on how to evaluate your peer, which is essential once they go and graduate and move on to the real world.
Yeah, so just to open it up for a discussion, just was wondering if there are any coding assignments in your courses where shifting focus from does it run to do you understand it could change how you are actually assessing their learning. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, feel free to unmute and share, or feel free to ask any questions if you have other questions related to the presentation today. Yeah, would love to just kind of open up the discussion. We had a question that came in from email. How does Visible AI handle students who write code outside the tracked environment? For example, on paper in a separate IDE or pair programming and then paste it in?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we track all pasted content. So if they wrote the code somewhere else and they decide to paste it in, they have to justify where they're getting why they're pasting something in. And then that pasted content will be flagged. So it'll count as part of the pasted content in coding authorship. And so that will be impacted in the stats and also be impacted in their authenticity score, or reflected in their authenticity score.
Right. Okay, perfect. Another question coming in from the chat. How much setup time does this take for a course with, for example, 200 plus students and multiple TAs?
Yeah, it's very easy to get started. So if you already have an assignment that they're used to running, you don't have to change anything. Especially if you're already using VS Code for those assignments, there's really minimal changes. All they have to do is download the extension. If for your TAs, I would say there's really no change from an instructor standpoint. For students, there's a few extra steps, like they have to log in, they have to enroll to Kritik. If they're using peer assessment, they need to be briefed on what peer assessment is and what to expect. There's a bit more time involved in peer assessment. If they're not using peer assessment, it's pretty much the same time commitment as running any other assignment.
Yeah, and that's where my team comes in for customer success. So that is where, we really are here to support instructors in getting set up. We do have one-on-one personalized onboarding sessions that we offer, as well as TA training sessions that we're happy to offer. If you have multiple TAs or even just one, we can go ahead and spend, 20 minutes walking them through what their role would look like. And then we also support from the student side with our intro videos that we have have slide deck presentations that we can provide you, syllabus inserts. So everything is kind of plug and play, and it does become very easy to implement, even in large class sizes, for sure. Any other questions there, Devanshi? Oh, here's another one. Can this integrate with what we already use, Canvas, Gradescope, and GitHub Classroom?
Yes, we do integrate with all the most popular LMSs. So Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, D2L, Brightspace, we do fully integrate with all of those. In terms of Gradescope, once the submissions are in Gradescope, then I think Gradescope could be used independently by the instructor, separately from Kritik.
Okay, perfect. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in. So if you still have any questions, feel free to type them. I'll come back to them. But just to kind of wrap it up, we do have one more session in our ImpactEd Week event, and that is tomorrow, Thursday, August 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with our wonderful guest, Alexis Thompson, who is a professor at the University of Buffalo in psychology. She is going to actually be sharing how she uses Kritik's tools in her large class of 450 students. And she is also going to really be speaking specifically to the evolution of her teaching from before she used Kritik to using Kritik for peer assessment, and now this fall evolving even further and introducing the authorship tracking element into her writing assignments. So it's going to be a great session, and you'll get to hear from someone who has been using this tool for many, many years, and just kind of see the impact it's had for her and her students. So hope to see you there. And you can also connect with us. There's a QR code that you can snapshot or reach out to Vlad or I via email. Happy to chat, happy to set up a customized walkthrough or onboarding session if this is something you'd like to implement this fall, or even if you just want to see more or have other questions answered. Just gonna check the chat one more time. Oh, one last question here. How long does it take students to get comfortable with the peer review workflow, and does it eat into class time? I guess I could answer that one. So, I mean, generally speaking, we do recommend when you're doing a peer assessment activity that you run between 3 to 6 activities as a best practice, just so that the students get the most benefit out of learning how to be good evaluators over the course of the semester. If you just run one peer assessment activity, they're not going to really kind of get the full picture of it, because it'll just be over before you even get to implement anything else. So we do recommend at least 3 for peer assessment. And then for the purely authorship tracking functionality, you could, of course, just use it for, 1 or 2 assignments. But the more you use it, the more familiar they're going to become with the tools and how it works. And the more that, they're going to get those AI literacy skills and maybe experiment with how they're using the AI or that kind of thing as well. So I would say, there are some instructors as well who like to use a strategy of having like an introduction activity also, so that it kind of gets the class warmed up. In fact, Alexis does that, so she's going to be speaking to that tomorrow. And so, it gets them to kind of talk to each other, get to know each other, even though it's anonymous, they get to learn a little bit about their peers and that kind of thing. So it's a pretty, intuitive, I would say, UX. It's pretty easy for students to understand these days. So I would say that they do get comfortable pretty quickly. And whether or not it eats into class time, so to speak, is really about how you choose to implement it. So some instructors choose to run their activities while they're using like in class, so that they are kind of running live, so to speak. And then others do everything completely outside of class time, just like other homework assignments and things like that. So it's really kind of flexible, up to you how you want to run it. And that all comes down to that scheduler that we showed earlier in the presentation. You have full control over when each stage is opening and how long students will have to complete each of those stages as well. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. It was really great to hear from everyone, and hope to see you at our last session tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mark and Vlad, for taking the time to join us here too and share what's new at Kritik.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.